from that, we had a big discussion on the major gaps for climate services in agriculture and water sector. And then we lastly ended on discussion about the opportunities that are there for the dissemination of weather and climate information. The discussion was much comprehensive. That's why we ended up in discussing only 3 key issues. And we had a farmer from South Africa who states that there's not much difficulty in accessing the weather information, but the only major issue is about the accuracy. But another comment was from other Met services also, who also stated that the issue is about the interpretation of the weather information. Yes, accessibility is okay, but what about the interpretation? So packaging of the weather information needed to improve. And we ended up also recommending some of the issues like the Met services. They need to find a way to package the weather information in a way that it is well understood by the users. But also they proposed the use of community radios because the community radio are able to interpret the weather in a way that the end user can be able to use it. And apart from that, in order for the community radios to communicate well the weather information, there's also a need to capacitate the presenters of these radios in order to be able to be confident, to be able to share the weather information effectively. Apart from that, we also see the need of using the extension officers in other parts of of Africa. So also they can be also part of supporting the dissemination of the weather information. Let me go to the next issue, which was about the major gap. The major gap was mostly on the communication of the weather information from the Met Services perspective on how to collect the weather information and disseminate timely, because we have a good number of customers or users who may need the tailored climate services. But the issue is the network of the observations of the weather information and how the information are being disseminated. But we saw Tanzania has also improved, and also in other parts like Maputo, where they have a good number of automatic weather stations to disseminate weather timely to the Met services. If I go lastly to the opportunities for disseminating climate information to the end user, there is established government communication channels to disseminate the weather information, like through the disaster management, and it goes direct to other ministry in case of the issue of warnings, or even the daily forecast and the 10 days forecast. But apart from that, for the seasonal forecast, there's radios and TV channels to share the seasonal forecast. That's all from group number 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So as Sari is not here, I don't know if Sebastian... yeah, sure. 1 minute addition. Maybe, right, Marcella?
Yeah, thank you. On the gaps, one thing that emerged in our discussion, it was clear that there are serious challenges in Zimbabwe, in South Africa, and a little bit of that in Mozambique, in terms of illiteracy for some of the consumers of climate services. It was highlighted that, the previous curriculum systems that were sort of attended by the current populations didn't factor or think about climate services, being so essential at this time. So there was a proposition on the gaps in terms of, capacitating curriculum systems, education curriculum systems, farmer associations, as well as the curriculums for training extension officers. Thank you.
Sebastian reporting.
Thank you, Ilaria. In our group, we tried to focus on the nexus issues and really discussing more about the trade-offs, opportunities, including financing aspects. We were there with the land bank and with farmers and with both the water resources units and agriculture sector of Mauritius. Just to highlight a few issues that came up, and we discussed a bit about the trade-offs between water and energy, and for example, the expansion of renewable energy. So there was a bit of a discussion on, is there any trade-off if you expand renewable energy, especially large-scale renewable energy? Does that mean less land for food production? We also talked about the opportunities and that there are different technologies. We can, there's solar that can be installed at high heights or on water bodies, and that does not necessarily mean reduction in food production. Solar energy production at a large scale in Mauritius, for example, is being supported by the government, and this is being done on marginal land, so it does not mean a reduction in food production. We also discussed issues on knowledge and understanding of appropriate technologies. So, for example, if you want to irrigate in South Africa, we're told that there may be challenges with power cuts, but you can switch to solar for irrigation. But then the farmers themselves also need to understand the options related to solar. So, for example, if you're using an AC pump and you want to switch to solar, it's not the most efficient system. You can do it. You can have batteries, you can have a charge controller and a converter. But DC pumps and panels have really advanced in technology and can be used very efficiently in the daytime to enhance irrigation. This, when combined with efficient irrigation and storage, can be a good option for farmers. There was also an issue of enforcement of water regulations. So water use, for example, if there are quotas, how are these monitored and enforced in the event of a drought? And we talked of the use of projections and forecasts and how municipalities in South Africa are using the forecasts and projections to plan and come out with quotas for farmers. But at the same time, farmers may have some pushback because they still need water. They still want to maximize production, and there's need for some enforcement. So working with the municipalities, those who are preparing the forecasts and projections, and those who actually use the water to ensure that the forecasts are used and applied in the sector. We also looked at the value chain and the linkages between sectors. So for example, in the crop sector and the livestock sector, there's linkages, and in the event of a drought, for example, maize production reduces, and which means maize prices increase. And that again has an impact on livestock production prices. Renewable energy again comes at a cost, but Land Bank was also talking about what are the opportunities for financing packages that combine, for example, solar pumping with issues of climate risk. So can there be packages that can be integrated with projections? A takeaway, I guess, coming from all this was that we need to really enhance the modeling and predictions, but more so their application and use in the different sectors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sebastian, and thank you, everyone. It's now time for Trevor, Moao, and Roberta to wrap up this session. So I think Trevor, you want to introduce? Okay. Then Roberta first. No, I wanted, I thought.
Yeah. No, yeah, maybe, yes. What about if we sit here in front of everybody?
Exactly. You can take a seat.
Yeah, Trevor, do you want to first sum up on the day 3, really, of our week, but the first day of the stakeholder workshop?
Thanks, Roberta. So in day 3, which was focused on the case study 1, food security in South Africa, The local stakeholders really helped us to understand the local climate services that are available in South Africa, and also to get the socio-economic context of the province. You know, we saw all the sort of breakdown of the regions in the province and the contribution to the economy and all of those statistics which will feed into the socio-economic impact assessment of the climate services. So that was all very informative for us. And then, of course, we had the sessions on the farming practices, which will feed into the modeling. And I think key messages that came out there were just the need to spread the risk. And regardless of what a climate service might be saying, the farmers are still going to be spreading their risk and not putting all their eggs in one basket. So I think that was, for me, an important message. A lot of their risk management is around drought, and you know, some of them, and it's not just, you know, irrigation. There's lots of strategies that they have around drought. You know, irrigation, we heard, was actually, even though some of them might have the systems in place, they're just too expensive to run with electricity prices. So, you know, there's really quite a lot of sort of ingenuity around dealing with drought, working with different plant populations and using different cultivars, and, you know, sort of really thinking, you know, very carefully through their strategies. And even when there is a wet season, that also comes with risks. We heard about pests and diseases that increase in that time. In this present season we were in, I heard stories of some areas experiencing crops that were actually rotting because of so much rain. So, you know, it's like in a farmer's case, it's like you can never win entirely. There's always, you know, if it's very wet or very dry, you're going to suffer some losses. And then in the breakout sessions, we heard from other regions of their experiences, and there's many applications of climate services in agriculture, but all of them are nuanced in some way to the local context. And dissemination, for example, depends on the local conditions. In some areas, you know, there's just not enough people with smartphones, and therefore there's a reliance on extension officers to take out the message. In other countries, there may be smartphones, but there's a poor network, and so it's sort of more texting than you know, sort of fancy maps being spread around for dissemination. I think a bit of an oversight on my part perhaps was I didn't check to see how many agricultural sort of specialists were coming from the other regions. So what ended up happening was, on the session on farmer practices, it was mainly the South African farmers who were really able to answer some of those questions. So we depended quite heavily on them, and we made them work quite hard. But they really had a wealth of information and insights for us. So we're very grateful for them for coming and sharing their knowledge with us. Yeah, I think overall, I think it was they were useful sessions, and we came away with a lot to digest. and I think it definitely added value to our case study. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Trevor. If I can add, if I can join Trevor in thanking all everyone, and a special thanks to the representatives of the Department of Agriculture and the representative of the farmers for sharing all the insights and for trying to, for all the time. Yesterday we've been until 7:30 p.m. With sharing ideas on how to also on the legacy of this case study after the project. So thank you very much, but also very much thanks to the Land Bank that is making this study possible. All the fruitful collaboration yesterday, but also in every day during because we are in contact also remotely always, and this is making possible to develop this climate service that will be useful for them, but as we are seeing, we are trying to make it useful also for the entire society, at least in the Northwest province. So I wanted to add on this and leave the word to Moao, right, for a wrap up of the today session. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Hilary. So on case study 8 on Mauritius, I think we started with a presentation by MMS, and I think one point which is a take-home message from MMS presentation is that climate services actually it should be a shared endeavor in which we try by all means to eliminate silos. So I think here it's a recognition that if ever a service has to be offered, it needs to be informed from various directions, from research, from the user perspective. In summary, the service providers should strive by all means to deliver what the users need. And I think if we look at all the presentations from WRU as well as the agri sector, there are commonalities there. We learn that indeed there are climate change induced threats on the ground. And what is encouraging from the two presentations is to realize that there is a substantial appreciation of the fact that there is value that could be derived from climate information, historic as well as forecast, as well as model outputs. And this is a pointer to more work into the tailoring of these services. Perhaps to summarize, the learnings that we are learning from Mauritius is that already there are resilience efforts for both the water sector as well as for the agri sector. And I think it's upon this case study to ensure that we provide those layers of information that make this resilience effort sustainable and as robust as possible. And heading into the breakout session, I think there are a number of things that one could underscore. What we learned from Mauritius is actually having overlaps with a number of countries and regions. I would like to underscore a few things when it comes to gaps and challenges. So one identified area during the breakout session was the approach to tailoring of climate services. There was a contribution, I think, from the visual audience that we need to pay attention to specificities of sectors in an attempt to deliver what the user needs. And this points to the issue of identifying that when it comes to users, we have a spectrum of users that are characterized by heterogeneity in terms of their needs. So attention has to be paid into the socioeconomic characteristics, the physical characteristics that are used to make a portfolio of services, as well as the issues of vulnerability that exist on the ground. I think these are very important inputs that are probably going to be taken on board going forward with these case studies. And indeed, in the end, will provide some solutions that are based to identified sensitivities, of course, informed by what the latest advances in science can provide. So perhaps to summarize, perhaps I should say it's difficult to actually summarize the wealth of information that we receive today, but the nice thing that is everything is on record. So I would like to thank everybody who actually made inputs, even those that I did not summarize in precise words. I think we have a wealth of information that is likely to inform our approach into climate services, as well as probably inform other studies as we try to find synergies between what is done in this project as well as other projects that are happening. So with this, I would like to thank you all for your inputs and time and attention. Thanks.
Thanks. And finally,
So last words before lunch, before you going home, probably. So I thank you very much, Trevor and Moaho, for your summarizing what we learned from the technical point of view to these 2 days. And I don't want to add anything because I think that was very comprehensive. What I want to say is that, comparing to what we wanted to achieve, I think we achieved probably more because we had from the presentation of our users and of all the stakeholders, we, I think, better understand the situation, the problems, and what we are going to achieve together. I think everybody contributed to this workshop. I don't think that I think I heard the voice of everybody here in this room. So for me, it's very important because then we created a group, a team that everybody feel like willing to contribute and to work together, which is really important. I believe we have been very inclusive and in our talks and with the breakout groups and also in this plenary. And I also believe that we have clear in our mind that this project and this working together is going to have an impact in our societies, and that we are really building something important for not just for our users, but also for ourselves as people that work in some institutions, and our work as a relevance to the society. So I think that I don't want to single out anybody here, but I want to thank everybody for their contribution, and also the virtual participants that they actually contributed quite a lot. I'm really impressed by new technology here. Of course, it's important to be present, but I think we felt also the presence of our attendees at in the virtual space. So we really hope next time you can join us, we can be together. And well, I just say thank you to everybody, and thank you for the host, the CSIR, I think, here in this city in Pretoria. And we have not finished, actually. This is the end of the stakeholder workshop, but we have this afternoon another session on capacity building, and it is open to everybody but especially it is addressed to our representative of the Med Services in the Southern Africa region. I hope I said, I don't know if somebody wants to add something on what they feel they achieve. I don't want to be the only one saying the last word, but please feel free if you want to say something that is urging you. Anybody?
Sebastian, a final word?
Now you're, oh, sunshine. Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I think climate services have got a big effect on our business day to day, year to year. Very big one. Actually, just now I was thinking by myself, how important do I rank climate services in my business? I think it ranks almost the second after availability of finance or resources to be able to plant. Once you have resources to be able to plant, you want to know whether the weather will play along that you can be able to get a good crop. So this was a very good eye opener for us. Very good session to attend, to be able to have the awareness, the background story of what's happening behind. We usually see the end product, so this was fairly eye-opening, and I think yes, the input of farmers probably helped because at least you get to know the value, or how do the end users see the product. And thank you for including us. Thanks.
Jonathan has also something to add.
Not a final word, just a very small word. A big thank you to Roberto for your leadership. This process started about 2 years ago, and I think we were supposed to be in person then. And I think the word for me that came out of this whole week was conversation, and you've just opened out and started a beautiful conversation. So thank you for that.
Well, I think we have to thank all of us. So a big applause to all of us because we have done great things these days. Thank you.